Today, we are going to be having a really open and transparent conversation about bass technique and all of the interesting sort of like nooks and crannies that you can go down when it comes to bass technique, because it's easy to look at somebody and consider that their technique is bad, right? You look at it and you're like, oh, they're doing that thing, and they shouldn't.
Oh, they're doing it wrong.
They're doing it wrong. They're playing with three fingers on their left hand. That's terrible. They're not using their little finger. Strike them down. You know, and ultimately that is. If you were looking at traditionally, if you're looking like a classical guitar player where there is this lineage of technique, you know, where books have been written for, you know, for years and years and years, you know, over 100 years. I don't know how many years. If you know, let us know in the comments. Classical guitar, how many people have been writing about this stuff for books for years, right? Let us know in the comments. But all that said, there's like this lineage of technique. Bass is like really new. So there's people doing stuff that isn't classed as, you know, correct technique, but also actually we've been talking about it today, questioning whether that bad technique is maybe the thing that makes them so special.
Yeah. And I mean, we're going to get into it today too. We have a bunch of examples, and we were sort of overwhelmed as we were talking about this. There are so many people we want to talk about and show that are fascinating from a technique perspective. We don't have time to do it all, but we're going to try to get to as much of it. I don't think
we're going to fit it all in. We've got like a lot. We both came like two excited 12-year-olds. Like, I've got all of these people to share. Yes, I'm not sure we're going to get through it all. We're going to kick off. Should we kick off with Flea in just a second?
Let's do it.
Because I think that his slap technique is incredibly interesting, and we have used it many times, saying, there's two ways of slapping. You've got the up thumb and you've got the down thumb. The down thumb is going to give you limited facility when it comes to doing things, or perceived limited. Well, it is limited ability to a certain extent. I've got another person, you know who it is, Ian, to show you who is maybe going to prove us wrong with that. But let me kick off with Flea. Let's
do it.
I hope that you, and just for context as well, people, we haven't seen each other's videos either. So I'm hoping that this first video gives Ian a kick. I'm sure he's watched it, but maybe not in a long time. Check this out.
I've never seen this. So I've never seen that before.
You've never
seen
it? Can you remember these basses? This was the Flea bass.
Flea bass, yes.
He launched his own line of basses, and this was, I think it was like this is a clip taken from the trailer that was made about them, but I don't think that all of this was in the trailer, but somehow this made it online, and this is it. Obviously, somebody had just said to Flea, hey, just slap the living hell out of this bass for about a minute, and then we're going to snip it, and then we'll put that in the trailer. This was the entire snippet. But you can see, let me just play this again. You can see that, like, his hand here, that's down thumb. Yeah. And what that is, do you want to show them? It's just this your thumb is going down towards the floor.
Yeah, so he's not doing the parallel thumb thing. He's doing, just essentially like take your hand, put it on your bass, right? And kind of like swinging wrist, right? Getting this thing.
Yeah.
And then, when the pop happens, it's just essentially everything he's doing is relying on like thumb pop. That, and I'm not very good at it because I typically slap a different way.
I was going to say, what's the way that you do it?
So I go parallel to the string so that I can come back up with the thumb. I started out like Flea. Oh, I can't even do it now. But now I go parallel to the string. because I want to be able to do that thing where I'm going back up with the thumb.
Yeah.
But that's not Flea's thing at all.
You can't do it when you're doing that,
you
right?
Can't. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But does it matter
why,
to
I guess,
Flea?
Which I guess why, and I've seen people talking about this, people saying, oh, they're doing down thumb. That's the bad thing. Hopefully that hasn't come from us, by the way. But I've seen people talking about that, mentioning it on YouTube videos. And I just kind of wanted to put this out into the sort of like universe that I don't think that it is bad technique to play with the thumb down. It's limited because you can't do, you can't play through and then play up like this. You're also going to get a meatier sound when you're going through the string like that. And there's other players that you can watch that, Marcus Miller, Victor Wooten, Larry Graham, that all go through the string like that. But there are a bunch of other players that are doing the, that
great
down
example
thing.
of a line.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe not great on flat wounds, but you know what I mean.
It's awesome. Sounds great.
But I think that so just to put it out there, just to say it into the universe, I don't think that it's bad technique. I think that it's just limited technique, and I think it's a different approach. And there's a bunch of people using it as well. Like I've got a clip here of Joe Dart doing the same thing. And there's a bunch of players that also started like that as well, started with the down thumb. And then some of them transitioned to more of a parallel thumb. You, Ian, myself, just recently in the last maybe like 24 months, we've had conversations with Jacob Umansky, who did the same thing. Charles Bertu also made that move over to the parallel thumb. But some people, they stick with the down thumb, and that's cool. So check out this clip from Joe Dart. Oh, go on, Ian.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, too, I think the real move here, I think the ninja move is to have both. I think the mistake is thinking that you have to that the elevated form is parallel thumb. I think for some things, parallel thumb is awesome. Like for single string, like especially high stuff. Like you cannot get that sound out of a bass slapping down thumb. It sounds so small. Like it just is, it's a smaller sound, but that's not what Flea's using it for, right?
Yeah, exactly. I do think that Flea sounds like Flea. That thing that he does because of the down thumb.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
It's aggressive. It's like nasty. It's almost like you're punching your bass. It's got that kind of bitch slapping the bass.
yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's, I think years ago I suffered from this thing of thinking, well, like, I'm going to do a thing and I'm going to go beyond that and past that. And that's not it. And Umansky talked about this too, Jacob Umansky, where he said sometimes the down thumb, like slap pop thing is what you need. Then other times parallel thumb is what you need. And so you should actually have both.
Yeah, I agree.
And I was like, oh, that's so good.
Yeah. I will say from somebody that has, like, I find it now weird transitioning between the two.
Right.
I used to feel really comfortable doing down thumb.
Yeah.
Right. And then I practiced the crap out of doing the
parallel.
The parallel thumb.
Yep.
And now I just feel kind of weird doing both. Like, I'm just going to carry on. At some point, maybe I'll feel good at doing one of them. Who knows? Here's a clip of Joe Dart doing down thumb as another example of this, and he sounds killing. Check it out.
He knows he murdered it too. Like that look over, back to the drums.
Oh yeah.
He's like, I can't believe that worked so well. Man, he has such incredible pocket.
Yeah, he does,
And the audience, that's such a great clip, right? Because the audience doesn't care how he's slapping the bass.
No.
Like no one is like, oh wow, I wonder if that E string would sound a little meatier if he were parallel thumb. It's just I think in this instance around technique, it's just about what you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 100%.
And he's accomplishing what he wants to accomplish. And then that means technique, 10 out of 10. Right.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't technique isn't technique in service of music?
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Technique is the thing often that just gets in the way of people doing the thing that they want to do. That's like, if your technique gives you the ability to do what you want to do, say what you want to do on the instrument, then that's great technique. Like it's because it's serving the music, it's serving you. Bad technique is actually when it really gets in the way of what you're doing. And that is something that like many people have issues with technique. We're given like lots of great examples today of people that have interest in technique and maybe not stereotypical, sort of like perfect, although we've got a few clips of that as well. But I absolutely agree. Yeah, the music, the technique serves the music and serves the person that's trying to use their voice to say something on the instrument. With just to wrap up this slap section, let me share, because Ian and I have said in multiple different conversations, podcasts and lessons and stuff like that, hey, down thumb is has its own vibe, its own sound and stuff like that, but it's limited. Parallel thumb, where you're playing parallel to the string, it's going to give you more facility, it's going to give you thicker tones, you're going to be able to do some like fancier stuff like the Victor Wooten, the Mark Miller stuff. But there's one guy. There's one guy.
Oh, I know.
And this guy is called Brian Bromberg. Shout out to Brian Bromberg.
Yeah.
He does the down thumb thing. And nobody played down thumb like Brian Bromberg, and he absolutely murders it. This is from 15 years ago. 15 years ago. Or at least 15 years ago, uploaded on YouTube. So it might be from maybe 16 years ago. I'm not sure, but check this out. In fact, that might be a 2008, maybe 2008, maybe.
Wow. Yeah, 16 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Check this out. He's a beast.
So effortless.
Yeah. There's so many cool clips of him online as well. I just wanted to grab one from back in the day.
My mom used to take me, I've talked about it before, to this jazz camp, right? And I got to see him a lot. The thing that I always remember about seeing Brian live is just the economy. He's barely hitting that bass, action super low. That was his old PVB Quad 4.
Yeah. He goes on to say that the whole thing, his whole concept when he's talking about slapping on this video, if anybody wants to go check it out, is all about relaxation. You've got to be super relaxed. And you can see what he's doing. His point actually talks about it, that when he's playing this, I'll use that other line as an example. Or whatever, right? It's,
right.
Your hand's barely doing anything. Your hand's kind of going, whatever.
Right.
And the left hand and the percussion elements are filling in all of the gaps. So all about relaxation.
With hammer-ons and pull-offs and things. Yeah.
Exactly that, yeah.
Where he goes, like those crazy flourishes that he does, I still am like, I've never gone in and like really tried to dissect that. It just still is kind of this wonderful mystery of my childhood. I remember seeing him in front of me doing that and thinking like it was unicorn shit.
Dude, we should do it. We should do I was watching this today, prepping for this video, and I was like, that would be a day well spent. Just like, like
getting
just
a handle
to be able
on
to
that.
whip that out. But when everything else is failing, okay. Everything else, I can just pop that one out. Listen, before we go any further in the conversation, just wanted to give everybody a quick heads up that if you want to get your bass technique up to that next level, and along with it, you're playing, I've just unrolled, blah, 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 blah. We might have to do an edit of that,
I think
Alan.
you keep going. No way. I think it stays.
Oh, God damn it, Alan. Don't listen to him. Listen, if you are trying to up-level your technique on the bass and you're watching this video and you're inspired, I'd love it if you checked out it's a 6-month accelerator course called the Technique Accelerator. It's freaking awesome. I am biased, obviously, because I put this course together a few years ago, but it's everything that I've ever taught on technique all in one package. Again, it's 6 months long. And there's a whole story about it. Basically, in my early 20s, I'm not sure whether you went through anything like this, Ian, but in my early 20s, I had this I'd been playing for like 2 or 3 years, and I had this kind of moment where I realized that there was a bunch of issues with my playing. I just couldn't play like the guys that I was really into. I was watching those guys, and then I was like trying to play the lines. I was also getting on gigs and recording myself and listening back, and it just sounded really messy, really sloppy. And after a lot of, kind of searching and thinking about it, it became really apparent to me that it was my technique that there was the issue, and not just one part of my technique either. It was like a bunch of different stuff. It was like left hand stuff. It was definitely right hand plucking stuff. Like that was a whole hot mess. And I basically wrote a curriculum for myself that I used, and I didn't know how long it was going to take. I just kind of like created this curriculum and practiced it for around 20 minutes every day, sometimes longer. I mean, I was completely obsessed with technique, and I did it for around 6 months, and it completely changed my playing. And it was the techniques I was practicing, but it was the specific exercise that I created to do that. And it was the big idea or the big concept that I kind of like drilled into with this curriculum that I created. It was that not focusing on my technique as one thing, bass technique, because it isn't one thing. It's actually a handful of things, more than a handful. It's your plucking, it's your articulations, it's the dynamics in your plucking hand. It's being able to put those into different groupings. It's how you shift up and down the fretboard. Yes. It's how you visualize the different areas of the fretboard and you navigate between them. There's all of these different areas of your technique, and with that, I created this curriculum and I worked on it for about 6 months. That's how long it really took, which is, if you're a lifer like Ian and I, right? A bass lifer, 6 months is a blink of an eye. And that's how long it took me to really change my technique around and really become the bass player I'm today. Weirdly, thinking about it, a lot of that legwork was done in a 6-month period in my early 20s. If you'd heard me before then, I didn't sound anything really like I do now. The reason why I sound like I do is because of that 6-month period and the legwork that I put into it. So all that to say, I got that and I packaged it up in a 6-month program. If you want to go and check it out, you can do. It's open for enrollment right now. I open it for enrollment once a year, and this is it. It's open right now. Let me get the URL for you guys. I'll also have
that URL.
Yeah, I'll have a link in the description down below, but it is masterbassTechnique.com. MasterbassTechnique.com. Hit the link down below in the description. Go check it out.
Hey, a little bit of audience advocacy here, because I have taken the Technique Accelerator, and I will say it really helped my technique as well. And I feel like even before I took it, I was like, I don't have really any technique problems, or I feel like okay about my technique. And then going through some of those exercises, I was like, ooh, I'm hung up on certain things. And I want to say, if you're out there and you're wondering, I struggle with certain lines, I struggle with certain passages, I don't sound clean, I don't sound tight. So much of that comes down to technique. Yeah. And here's something else too. If you're like, I kind of like the way I play, I don't know that I want to reinvent my technique. Don't think of it as that. Think of it as giving yourself options, right? You can always baseball bat the neck and play a C. You can always play like this. You can choose to play this way. But if this isn't a choice, right? If your shoulder's up, your elbow's in, you're locked in, your thumb is over the neck, this isn't necessarily bad. But if this is default, you can't you don't have dexterity in this position.
Yeah,
this is great for rocking a C on a gig, but it's not great for playing anything that requires any kind of dexterity, right? So the ability to have that technique and to go through these exercises that Scott has created and laid out really helped me. And I think it will help a lot of people, give you options. So when it's that time to go through that, to play that lick or play that passage or play that style of music that requires more dexterity, you'll have it. And that's what I want people to think about, is not like, well, now everything I do is wrong and I have to reinvent everything. You could think of it that way, but I think the more healthy way to think of it is now it just opens you up. Now you're like an engine with limitless potential. Yeah. If you open up your technique and you have options, now you can access a bunch of different music genres, songs, styles. It really helps you take it up a notch, many notches.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. There's actually amazing too that you went through it too as well, man. There's two bass players I was thinking about whether I should mention their names. I'm not going to mention their names, but there's two sort of like super duper stars as well that have been through that.
I know those names. Yeah, well, I think I know one. Yeah,
I don't think we can't say it. I don't think it'd be cool. But anyway, there's two superstars that went through that through that program. And then also just to say as well that the way that I think about it as well is that your bass technique is the foundation that you build your house on. It's kind of like, it's the thing. It's everything comes there. Like everything that you do on the bass is linked to your technique. So if it's not locked in and you've got your body just doing what the fuck it wants, and you haven't got control over it, then you're not driving the car, somebody else is. And it's for most people. I had a conversation with Craig Strain about this recently, and he does like a student feedback thing in the membership. And he I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was something like 90% of the issues with all of the students that he's interfacing with, it's all coming down to technique. Yeah, it's technique issues. Yeah.
Well, I used to do that. I mean, if you'll recall,
you did
it.
I did it
first.
Yeah.
And then I did it. And the amount of time that I talked about simple things like getting a big sound by pulling through the string, right? Instead of pulling away from the string, and having your hand, the space, the gap between, the palm of your hand and the neck, and how to play one finger per fret or 1, 2, 4, like those simple technique things that are actually not necessarily that simple if you haven't done them before, right?
Yeah.
But the amount of times I came back to technique when I was helping students as well was like crazy.
It's the thing. Yeah, actually, isn't it? It's the main thing. And you might be thinking, I bet groove is as well. If people are listening to this, well, groove and your time is actually linked to your technique. I know that because I'm a bad drummer. I'm a wannabe bad. I don't want to be a bad drummer, but I'm a wannabe good drummer. But I'm actually a bad drummer because. And I've got great time when I play bass. I've got great time. I understand. I can lock in. But behind a drum kit, that I'm not as good. In fact, I kind of drag and I rush and all kinds of shit, right? Well, why is that? How can I be good on one instrument and bad on the other? The reason is my technique. It's because exactly. So if you're playing and you're dragging, you're playing a fill and it all feels. It's all based on your technique. So anyway, not to overdo the point. If you want to go check out that program, again, it's the Technique Accelerator. I'd love it if you checked it out. And just to get that URL, it is Master Bass Technique, masterbasstechnique.com, not the other one. masterbasstechnique.com, and the link's in the description. Anyway, do you want to move on to the whackers, Ian? You've got some whackers for us. That's the name.
I mean, let's talk about one of my favorites, Geddy Lee, right? So, you've got guys that have this kind of right hand or plucking hand approach where I just spoke about, getting a big fat sound with your bass is about pulling through the string, right? And not necessarily pulling away, but there's all kinds of things you can do to get a sound out of your bass. Actually, before we talk about Geddy Lee, let's talk about the guy that I think influenced Geddy Lee a lot. Let me show you a clip from John Entwistle playing with the Who, taking that solo on My Generation. Let's check this out. Okay, Smothers Brothers, John Entwistle. This is my favorite sound he's ever had. Comes up on this cool solo. Here we go. I love that the cameraman thought it was...
Yeah.
That face, too.
Wild sound.
Yeah, and that moment right there, that last riff that he plays, they get a close-up of his fingers. Check that out. And it's just, man, it's so interesting. I feel like before Entwistle, and that he's playing that on a Vox hollow body bass on that performance, right? He goes on to play a gazillion different instruments. You can never pin him down for one instrument. There's never been like that's the Entwistle bass, because he played Rickenbackers and Thunderbirds and then Frankenstein basses. Remember the Warwick Buzzard?
Yeah. Right? He played an Overwater. He played an Overwater. Yeah, back in the day, he had an Overwater as well. Yeah.
But his whole thing is based on this kind of thing. So instead of like pulling through the string, Entwistle is playing this kind of thing, where he's actually hitting the bass with his fingers, kind of close to the neck.
So imagine this is the string, right? My hand, you're going through like that, and you're hitting it like a golfer would hit like a golf ball, whack all the way through.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's actually not very hard. He's not hitting it like, he's not playing like, it's not that sound. It's actually pretty light.
It's the motion, isn't it? It's almost like...
It is like slapping, yes, but just with your fingers. Yep. And I feel like he's even sometimes got this 3-finger thing, like, three fingers.
It kind of looks like it on that video, like he was almost using 3 fingers.
Yeah, it's so cool.
And he was the influence to your earlier point. He was the one you think that influenced Geddy, because he's got a similar approach, hasn't he?
Yes, I think Entwistle influenced a lot of like smasher technique folks, because he just had that sound. It stood out. Like if he were to play this way, it's so different than this.
Different,
right?
Different world. Yeah.
Different world.
Sounds like a different instrument. Yeah.
And it's crazy because it's not actually that much more effort. Like if I'm playing this, trying to get nice and clean, versus this, I'm not playing harder. I'm just using literally a different technique. Yeah. It's not like more exertion. I'm just swinging my hand, like Scott talked about, through the string. And so we called them
smashers, didn't we? And at least I did. I was like, the smashers or whatever it was. It's actually...
The whackers. The whackers.
The freaking whackers. It's actually incorrect calling them that, isn't it? I'm doing a bad marketing job. Because they're not whacking it. It's more like the swingers. Hey.
Yeah. Just, the innuendo in this episode is outrageous.
I love a good swinger.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, it's really, it feels really unnatural for me to do that. I would have to, not that it wouldn't do for all time. I'd have to spend a little while just getting into that technique and really understanding how to physically get it into my hands so I can access it.
Yeah, because it's high stakes in terms of like, there's nowhere to hide. Like, so, like the first time I started that, I missed the string, right? And oops, it's high stakes. It's like you're getting this sound. I'm kind of swinging from a ways away. And if it's uneven or if one is louder than the other, you hear that stuff more
it's the distance,
than maybe you do. Yeah.
Instead of...
Yeah. Right. Yep. Part of it is distance.
And then more to the next, so you can get the...
Yeah.
Get the strings actually smacking against the like when you're slapping, right?
And it is like a slap. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So interesting.
And if we bring this over to Geddy Lee, right? So Geddy Lee is really influenced by...
Give me a Geddy clip, dude. Have you got a Geddy clip?
Yeah, sure. Let me get a Geddy clip. Hold on.
Right now, we'd like to do one of those songs. This is Living in the Limelight.
1981.
Oh.
His Rickenbacker just sounds like a giant distorted piano.
Yeah.
Now you can kind of see it there, right? Like when he's singing, he's hitting the bass, I think, actually harder than Entwistle typically.
Yeah.
And he's getting a slightly different thing. He's not quite up right by the neck like Entwistle was. Like, check this out one more time.
Oh, yeah.
On that Rick, he's kind of over the neck pickup. He doesn't play with the cover. Yeah. So Geddy's thing is more, he also has like more distortion on his sound than Entwistle did in that last clip. Yeah. I mean, Entwistle moves on and gets crazy distortion in later. But, Geddy's kind of got this thing where he's doing a little bit of a combination of like, he's hitting, but it's not here. It's like, it's kind of over the pickup and it's harder.
But got it. But he's got that the through stroke, like the golfer hitting the ball.
He does, yeah. But it's almost like he also apparently has like a really intense nail on his first finger that
like a talon.
Is. Yeah, kind of, yeah, yes, like a rock talon.
Yeah, he's got fucking rock talon.
Yes,
Geddy and his rock talon.
Yeah, but I think you can kind of get close. Like if Entwistle played this in the '60s, it might sound like.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah,
and Geddy doesn't sound like that. Geddy is more like. There's a little bit more pull. So for Geddy, it's like he's hitting, but then also pulling through. So it's a little bit like that, as opposed to that. It's like meaner in a way.
Yeah, it's definitely nastier, isn't it? It's definitely nastier. Have you got any more for us?
I mean, I've got a bunch more, but I feel like in terms of the, what did you call them? The whackers?
I feel bad now calling them the whacker, the smashers or whatever. Yeah. Are we out of those?
Well, yes, but let me just say to wrap up the section on the smashers or the swingers.
Yeah, or the whackers. Please, yes, no, please. It needs to be the swingers.
Yeah. To wrap it up, I will say Geddy sound, so many people misconstrue Entwistle and Geddy. They focus on gear. They'll be like, oh, it's a jazz bass, or oh, it's a Rickenbacker, or whatever, but it's really technique. I'm not playing, I have a jazz bass here with Thunderbird pickups in it, but I'm not playing any of the same gear Geddy or Entwistle does. And I'm not saying I'm sounding like them, but what I'm trying to do is really get close with the technique I'm using.
Yeah.
And if Geddy played Limelight this way. Yeah, and it goes against that thing that Michael League told us, right? Michael League says, when you record your bass, the waveforms need to look like sausages and not traffic cones. Yeah, This would be sausages. Because it's fat from the beginning.
Yeah.
Traffic cone. You have that hit and then the thing dies.
Yeah.
But he's right in a lot of instances, but where he's wrong is that is that this particular sound gives these players their sound.
Yeah.
Now, right, you shouldn't always default to that sound.
Unless you're Geddy.
Unless you're Geddy. Yeah. Geddy Lee's like, I've refined my technique and now But you should be able to choose. You should be able to choose. Yeah. So these dogmatic things of like, oh, well, there's one way or there's this way or it should always be. No, it shouldn't. It's about discerning what's the right technique for the music. And I think for Rush or for that sound, that Geddy Lee thing is amazing.
100%. Shout out to Brian Bromberg, actually. He was the first person I heard talking about this kind of like swinger approach.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Brian's a swinger.
You're never going to be able to say it and not smile. Like you'll never be able to. 8th grader.
Oh my God. If that, maybe younger.
5th grader.
Yeah, 5th grader. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, moving on to the next section. So we've had the down thumbers, we had the swingers.
Oh yeah, we've had the slappers, we've had the swingers.
Yeah, the slappers and the swingers. Yeah. I want to move on to talking about like the ultra solo guys, the guys that are not playing solo bass on their own, but the guys who are kind of known in more sort of like jazz improv world, because I think there's been an interesting progression in that world over the last sort of like 15 years, which really started at Jaco Pastorius, and then we are where we are, right? I'm going to show you 3 interesting players in that niche and what they're doing. I'm going to show you 2 that you might have heard of, probably will have heard of, and then I'm going to show you where I think that technique came from. But before we get to that, just because it's been burning a hole in my heart that I need to talk about it.
Yes,
I want to have like an interlude. Can you remember when you went to the cinema? I don't know if you were. Did you in the States? Did you used to call it the cinema? We used to call it the pictures. In the UK back in the day, can you remember that, Alan? We didn't go to the fucking cinema. We went to the pictures.
We have never said either. We always used to say go to the movies.
Oh, we do not call it going to the movies. We don't go to the movies. We go to the cinema, or old schoolers, we go to the pictures.
It's very buttoned up.
It absolutely is, right? And there was no popcorn. But anyway, I digress. But
what? There wasn't?
No. Was there any popcorn? No popcorn.
Are you kidding? What did you just sat there in the frickin' dark and watched the cinema?
Ice lolly or ice cream at best.
Oh, cool. That's cool.
Okay, right. But interestingly, and I don't know why they don't do it anymore, but in the old school pictures cinema that we used to go to back in the day, they'd have an interlude in the middle of the film for you to get your snacks. Pee. You get an ice lolly. You get like an ice cream and shit like that. This is the interlude. So this isn't really a section, but it's kind of like, I wanted to make its own section in the interlude, right? I'm just going to play you the track and then we can get into it.
Play me the track.
Check out this.
The one and only Billy Sheehan!
Pulling the crap out of those strings as well.
What a sound. Just the back. Audience advocate, though.
What the
audience
heck
advocate
is going on?
I know. Audience advocate, though. Like, okay, so I came up in that era. You came up in that era. But somebody is going to say that's not bass.
Well,
right?
First of all, just humor me before we do this. Just check this out. Because he was just warming up. Oh, I love the way bass sounds when he does that as well.
Incredible showman.
I've played Billy's bass as well. The action is not super low, and the neck is like a proper old school P bass neck. It's actually totally. It's you imagine to play it to be like this speed machine. It is not.
It's not. Yep.
And the reason why I wanted to, I think that having a conversation about bass technique and not mentioning the outrageous physical prowess, whatever Billy Sheehan can do on the bass, mentioning it would be a freaking crime against humanity, because I just have and I am obsessed with technique. I've always been obsessed by it because I would like the soloing thing. I'm super into it.
Yes.
So I'm like looking at, I've been into the jazz guys. I'm like watching the Scotty Sverrisons and the Matt Garrisons. I'm with Hadrien Feraud, and I'm watching, and their technique's incredible, right? But I'm also like a rock guy, and come really from late 80s, early 90s, Satriani, Vi, Dave Lee Roth, Whitesnake, like come from that. And this is somewhat like a weird transition between, and especially like Mr. Big as well, who this is obviously my Mr. Big gig. My point here is that I'm a real big fan of like being able to do it like on the bass, being able to sort of like be like agile. And then I'm also a huge fan of like Vi, Satriani. And to me, nobody has done what Billy Sheehan did or does. He's like this weird outlier who he's the only one that has done that thing to the ability. Like I watch Van Halen, for instance. I watch Vi or Satriani or John Petrucci, whatever, and they're like blaze. And you're like, oh, well, you could never do that on guitar. I mean, you could never do it on bass.
What they're doing on guitar.
What they're doing on guitar. But Billy Sheehan actually can. And I think that's...
And on like a big P bass.
On a freaking big P bass with a fat ass neck. And it's I think it's so interesting. And
I owned that bass too. And it was headstock heavy, and like the neck is huge. And like that wasn't an easy bass to play. And he just absolutely crushes. I know what you mean. I think I do want to ask though, like, so if you're talking about technique serving a song or serving music, that technique that Billy is doing is not going to serve many people's gigs, right?
I think that's kind of like, that's just him sort of like shredding, right? It's just, it's like doing the shred thing. But if you wanted sort of like this kind of thing, like this would be serving the song. And they go into that outrageous intro. If anybody hasn't heard it, it sounds like it's the live version. There's a whole thing around it. But right at the beginning of that intro, there's a whole sort of like bass and guitar section, all in unison. It's outrageous. And it's just, I think that Billy needs, like, if there was ever anybody was out there building the bass version of Mount Rushmore, right? Bass Rushmore. I think that Billy needs to be on there. And what I was saying to you earlier is that, because I think that more people should be taking note of what he did, like from a physical standpoint, what he was able to do, because it was just outrageous. And what I posed to you earlier was, before we hit record, I was like, because I think that obviously, like, Billy's got like hundreds of thousands of fans, but like there's also like some, like, I want him to be a level up from where he is, in terms of like just like shock and awe. Like people are like, oh my God, like bow down to Billy, because, and I posed to you, I was like, I wonder if it's because nobody ever did it after him. That's why there was no, how I framed it to you is like, what happens if there was only like one Hendrix? There was no Van Halen.
People didn't carry on the lineage.
There was nobody carried on the lineage. Nobody, for me at least, carried on the lineage of Billy Sheehan. He came like out of nowhere with his the wife bass with the freaking raccoon tail, and he just tore everybody's faces off doing that
Alice.
thing.
Yes,
and like doing that thing, and then you could argue that there's like metal guys doing. I don't think it comes from
not quite in the same, and not in that same sort of showmanship way. Like the 80s and early 90s had that sort of, it was like tight pants and hair and it was this like shredder showmanship thing. But he was totally special.
There was a world, dude, where we might have wore latex. Or spandex, or whatever it was. Probably 100%. Spandex, not latex. Is latex like the shiny version of spandex? I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe.
You can let us know in the comments.
I think I know why, right? I would say the reason that it sort of like began with Billy and stopped with that level is Billy was right on the edge of it becoming like that video has got to be from like what, 90, 91, 92, maybe? 92. That was right on the edge of grunge killing hair metal.
Yeah. It was like mid-90s. So, it was
2 records. 91, uncool, dude. 91. 2 records did it. The Black Album from Metallica and Nevermind.
Yeah.
And then it was like, then Billy and that crew looked silly in comparison to what was cool.
It was like and MTV moved in that direction as well. I listened to a great conversation with Richie Kotzen, actually. Richie Kotzen and Justin Hawkins talking about the same thing. Late 80s was the coolest thing ever. And then Nevermind popped, and then MTV, and it was the whole the culture of MTV. MTV saw that this new movement was going in that direction, and basically dropped any. They were like, "Oh, we're not going to give any of that music coverage," and then all of that was dropped. And off the back of that, the labels started dropping as well, and there was this hardcore move away from like hair rock, hair metal, and spandex.
And I think then the 80s, right? There was sort of an 80s nostalgia thing. And I think like it is more acceptable to look back on that stuff with fondness. But I think it just stopped that desire in players dead in the tracks, right? Like it wasn't cool to tap in the early 2000s, you know what I mean? Or even like the late 90s. It was like
in the mid 90s, it was like
it completely went away. Speaking of tapping, one Billy Sheehan thing you can do, everybody, take your bass. Best thing he starts out with.
That was what he was doing on that. Yeah.
It's so fun. You can take your bass, like check it out, from a G to an A, and then do it with this hand. And you put more fuzz on it, maybe? I don't know. Oh, it's so fun.
It's so fun. Anyway, shout out to Billy. I want somebody to grab the mantle. Somebody prove me wrong. Somebody come along like Billy and be like, hey, I can do what Billy did. I can do it.
Show us.
Show us. There shouldn't be just like one Hendrix. There shouldn't be one Van Halen. There needs to be like people taking this along. Anyway, jumping on to, that was a long interlude, I get you, but sometimes you need a while to eat your ice cream. I'm jumping into, so the guys I wanted to jump into next, the guys that are sort of like doing this. There's a lot of these super improv guys. I've got Hadrien Feraud here, which I'll show you. And these guys, if an alien came down and they were like, hey, Scott, show me, like, what's stereotypical perfect bass technique? I would probably point to some of the guys that I'm about to show you, because it's moving into like a classical guitar realm. And I think that's why they're playing like that, because, well, if we watch Hadrien play now, you'll be able to see that the bass is positioned in a completely different way to facilitate basically the right hand being as straight as possible. So no angle in the wrist here, and then barely any angle in the wrist here. Whereas if you sit like this, you get angle here on the wrist, and you also get potential angle here on the wrist. So they do this this sort of like middle classical guitar technique. And it's interesting watching a few players move in this direction. I've talked to a bunch of individuals in the membership about it, and you definitely see a few people doing this as well. So I think it's more common than we think it is. Anyway, here's Hadrien doing his thing.
So baby, make a move.
And you can see there, like his arm, he's got no bend in it at all, slight bend in the wrist, but it gives him the facility to play down here at the nut end, but also when he's down here ripping, it's sort of like it's easier than
it's easier to get up there.
Because from a body perspective, when you're here, when you come down, your arm actually starts whacking against your side, but when you're here, it's like, well, your arm doesn't hit your side at all. So it's completely open. It feels weird for me to play like that, to be honest with you. Like, it just feels a bit alien. And I'm not sure that it will be solved with time. I expect it would be if I just sort of like, made the decision to be like, I'm going to play it like this. I expect it'd work at some point. But there's another guy, great bass player called Janek Gwizdala, and you'll see it's a very similar technique.
Where he's on his
exactly knee. It's always on the left knee. It's always on the left knee.
And that's you enjoying a nice cup of coffee.
Who's this good-looking fellow? Who's this looker?
That's great.
But you can see it's the same deal. So he's got the bass on the left leg, and he's got the straight arm here, and he's got this unlimited access to these higher notes. And it's, you can play down here. Now, interesting, what you can't see is I think he's got his foot on a footstool. If you see, his left leg is higher than his right leg. And I think that Hadrien, I think a couple of years ago when I was hanging with Hadrien in London, we put on a workshop and he was doing the same thing. I think that he had a footstool. So the key to this technique is you've got to get that left leg. You can't. So I'm going to sit like that. I can't do this because the bass is too low. So I need to get the left leg up to be able to pop the bass on there and do that, right? Some people use straps. Janek used a strap, as you can see here. If I go back to Hadrien wasn't wearing a strap, I don't think. No, he's not wearing a strap. But you'll see again, just for my point, his left leg's again higher than the right leg. So he's got his left leg on a classical guitar footstool. If you haven't seen one, it's just like if you type classical, we'll maybe put a screenshot on here. Alan, if you make a note of that, classical guitar footstool, we'll pop that on there. But I think that this actually came from this gentleman here, who's not using a classical guitar.
Yes.
I think that this is where it originates from, Willis. And because he always was an advocate of the classical guitar technique on bass. You can play a little bit. Now, the interesting thing is he hasn't got his left leg lifted up or elevated. And you can see there's a gap here between his left leg and the bass.
Has a strap there.
And it's because he's got a strap. So you can sit in that position with a strap on, but it's slightly different. To get a little geeky about this, without the footstool, your bass is going to be flatter against your body. With the footstool, you can kind of like get that left leg up, which means you can angle the bass a little bit like that. And just to switch back to Hadrien here, where is he? This one. You can see that the bass is not flat to his body. It's not like that.
Right.
It's angled like that, which gives you more access.
Also, I have to say, in these 3 short clips of these guys that you played, all 3 of them did the same thing, where they played a section of muted thumb and then fingerstyle.
Yeah.
Like they went between that thing of playing, like playing with their palm maybe on the bridge with a tiny bit of muting.
Yeah.
Then to something like more traditionally finger style. But that's interesting too, right? Like this position of playing like thumb, finger, or just thumb, finger. That's a thing. That's a thing as well. That's a whole nother
I
zone.
wonder, because their wrists so strained.
Yeah.
It's really easy to move like from there to there. If I'm like this, it's much more of a move actually, physically.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Versus if it's Yep.
And they both do that all the time. All of them do that
Yes.
switch between finger and muting all the time. We've entered Geeksville.
Well, I gotta say, I'm gonna take it up a notch. Let's go vertical content zone, because I'm gonna challenge all of you to try something that I have really jumped into and really enjoyed, is not resting it on a leg. I want you to take your bass and put it almost up in the air on your right knee and find the balance point to where it's kind of the weight is supported on the bass. You're not going to let it go, but if you did, it wouldn't fall immediately. And then I want you to play something.
Where's the strap button, dude?
The strap button is
the strap button like, is it more towards the center of your body, or is it over on the?
It's off the side of my body.
So it's okay. That's interesting.
I started to play this way to just fit a bass into vertical content, and I freaking love it. Once you find that balance point, everything is nice and close to you. Yeah. And you don't need a strap.
Yeah, I haven't got it at the minute. I'm kind of being attacked by it, but yeah.
I play this way now a ton when I'm sitting, and there is a little bit because the bass wants to fall, you do end up sort of supporting it a little bit with left hand.
Is it leaning back?
But I love it.
When I lean back a little bit.
Yeah. Sure. Lean back, baby. Yeah. Look at that. I can see both of your hands. This is perfect for content. Yeah, baby. Yeah. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. Are we supposed to be rating these bass players' techniques?
Yeah, they're all good. They're all good. Where are we going next, dude? Where are we going next?
Well, I mean,
over to you.
We've got some pickers.
Yeah.
Like, there's this idea of, you can hold a pick a zillion different ways and think about the pick, right? And there's so many ways to do this. I feel like that could be its own episode, but we're gonna get it in here. So you've got Bobby Vega, right? And let me pull a clip up of Bobby.
Oh.
Wow. That's a really nice way to see his playing. Look at that. Let's just use something here. Let's slow this down. Check it out. Just to see what he's doing, I'm going to take this and I'm going to slow it down to 75%. Yeah. Let's check him out. Yeah, so Bobby's got this whole thing where everything is based on, right, this down up pick thing, but with backbeat accents on 2 and 4. So it's not just this. It's not just up and down. And a great thing you can do is just take your pick and play 2 notes on one string and then 2 notes on another. So like G string first, maybe.
Yeah, he's going up and down. He's going
right?
Yeah. That's great.
And that is, what a sound, man. Let me just put it back up to full speed and hear what he's doing here one more time, because what a great vibe this guy has.
Dude, he's and one of the most musical bass players I've ever. It's so, I love watching him kind of just diddling around with he's so, and diddling around, I mean, just to tell people what I mean by that. You can just imagine him just sitting at home, just kind of just sort of like messing around on his bass, just playing away, and you're just coming up with these incredibly creative lines. It's just absolutely beautiful. There's also, I won't be able to find it now. I have to go on take a bit to find it. There's some incredible clips. One specific one from Bobby playing in the late 80s or early 90s in a trio in a club, and he is outrageous, because all of the stuff online, it's like him playing in kind of like doing like clinic type stuff where he's playing on his own
environment.
Solo environment. There's a couple of stuff on EMG's channel, I think, of him playing in the trio. But this is like back in the day. Yeah. And he was incredible. There's this one thing that he did. I'm going to find it. I'll send it to you. And have I shown you it before?
I don't think so.
You'd know if I'd shown you it. It's incredible. It's bananas. Yeah. Just so musical. That's what it is. Yeah. It's so musical.
Yes, totally.
And really hard. Man. And it sounds and looks like it's just falling out of him. So
absolutely.
It's just like so easy. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, and there's so many things going on. He's doing all these like wrong things, right? Of putting his thumb over the neck, doing that kind of thing, playing a 10th. And, and you're thinking like, oh, that's bad. But no, because he could do it the other way. He's just choosing in that moment. He's choosing to do a different technique, right? One thing that's interesting about Bobby is he holds his pick where the butt end. So instead of using the point of the pick, he holds it to where the butt end is sort of sticking out. So a classic, teardrop pick design, he uses one of the like broader edges. And it just, he thinks it gives him a warmer tone. That's, and that's with the butt end. Here's with the point.
Yeah.
Right. The point does give you a little bit more like,
more pointed. The sound's more pointed, and then
versus the kind of the butt end. Man, I love his playing so much.
We've got a full workshop with Bobby on in the SBL membership. Have you checked it out?
Oh, yes, of course. Absolutely. Yeah. I love Bobby. So I can't believe I haven't seen the clip you're telling me about. I need to go and do that immediately.
I'll find it for you. But if you guys are members of the SBL membership, go check out Bobby's full workshop. It's in there for you. It's like an hour long. We recorded it down in London. He brought pictures of his family in, put them on top of his amp. It was cool. Had all of his he's got like a pick tin. He had the pick tin with all of these different types of picks in it. He's a bass super nerd. The best of the best variety.
All right, so check it out. Can I do one more pick player? Let's contrast Bobby with somebody else that people have said has terrible pick technique.
Oh,
Scott, terrible pick technique. 1 out of 10.
1 out of 10.
Oh yeah, man. People have said it. I've seen the comments. Check it out.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, listen to how huge this sounds. Okay, obviously Nirvana, this is Blue, and we've talked about this before. We've talked about Krist Novoselic before.
Dude, Nirvana was a bass trio.
Yeah, I know.
It was like
bass riffs.
It was insane. Ian and I, we were like, oh, I wonder how many Nirvana tunes got great bass intros. All of them, pretty much. It was like, yeah, all of them. It's a bass band.
Yes. And Krist had, so, I mean, I kid, right? Like, not everybody's out there saying he has terrible pick technique. But I think when you're younger and you learn like, oh, you hear, I don't know, maybe platforms like SBL talk about the great technique of somebody like Bobby Vega. Yeah. And then you contrast that with something like Krist. It's easy to sort of say, oh, well, this is meat-handed. This is like rock stuff. And Krist couldn't play like Bobby, but it's not the point. He has a sound and a technique that I don't know that Bobby could play like Krist, Yeah. It's a completely different thing, and it goes for something different. And let's just take a look, because you first showed me this video, and you see how he's holding the pick. Check it out. I think... Here we go, right at the top. There. I mean,
so weird, isn't it?
He's actually got it in his thumb and second finger. And I've heard that he would play, so he's got his in between the thumb and second finger, and then he's tuned down to like, gosh, man, it's a C sharp for this tune. Oh, where is it? But see, I can't even, okay, so he's doing all wrist motion and holding the pick between his thumb and second finger. I can't even do it.
I was going to say, no, dude, it looks more awkward. It's like...
I know. It's like this, right?
It's like a flipper.
And he gets this big snappy sound as a result. Yeah. And I've heard too that sometimes he would hold the pick between the two fingers and the thumb, right? I can't even do it. But that's closer to his sound, right? Than that doesn't sound like him. Yeah. This.
And then if you play... Can you play that with a complete same sound, but with a completely different pick technique? Like maybe up near the neck or something, quite delicately.
Oh, so yeah, sure. So like, the classic guitar grip, knuckle, thumb.
Yeah, just doesn't sound anything like it.
Or the Bobby Vega, right?
Yeah, I kind of like that.
That is pretty hip.
That would have been good. MTV acoustic.
Yeah. But there's something about this open with the like leverage of his technique. See, and I'm still using too much arm. He's all wrist.
Yeah, it's like that.
I can't even freaking do it. Yeah. But it's so interesting because, there's a technique that gives him a sound. So it's similar to the swingers, right?
Yeah.
We've got the swingers, the slappers, the pickers. You've got two completely different vibes with Bobby Vega and Krist. And I think that both are valid because they give you a different sound.
Exactly. Dude, we didn't do it. I've got a bunch of more to go. We need like a round 2. Did you do all of yours?
I mean, mostly. I've got I was going to talk about Stanley Clark too. We've got
Stanley.
We got the Rakers. We got these guys. Okay, we got the Rakers, man.
2 things. If you want like a round 2, and we'll kick it. We promise to kick it off with Stanley Clark. If you want a round 2, please let us know in the comments. And then again, if you want to check out the Technique Accelerator course I've just opened for enrollment, all you need to do is go to the masterbasstechnique.com. I'll put the link in the description down below. So I'm laughing because of the thing.
I knew you couldn't get through it. I knew you couldn't.
masterbasstechnique.com. Should we tell them who actually noticed it? I didn't even think about it until you mentioned it.
I was like, shut up on that, dude, because you know what it's close to. And you're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, don't make me the guy.
Yeah, are you the guy? So masterbasetechnique.com. Check out the Technique Accelerator, and the link is in the description if you want to go check it out. And that's it for now. Take it easy, guys. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.